Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers of modern psychology, left us with a truth that deeply resonates with the human soul. Pain is not merely a burden we carry, but a gateway to our most profound transformation. Too often, when we face suffering, we perceive it as an enemy, something to escape from at all costs. But Jung taught us that within that very pain lies the key to discovering who we truly are and attaining an inner peace that cannot be broken. Perhaps, at some point, you have felt that pain is consuming you as if there were no way out, no solution in sight. But what if I told you that the pain you fear so much is actually a sign? Not a sign of weakness or defeat, but a call, an urgent message from within, from that part of you that longs to be seen and heard. Jung described the unconscious as a vast and deep ocean, holding all our secrets, our repressed emotions, and our shadows. And in the heart of that ocean, pain acts as a beacon, guiding us toward the parts of ourselves that we have neglected. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack on a long journey. Each step feels more difficult. The weight becomes overwhelming and exhaustion takes over. But one day, you decide to stop and open the backpack. Inside, you find not just stones, but also tools, lessons, truths, and a strength you never knew you possessed. This is how pain works in our lives. It is not there to destroy us, but to reveal what we need to confront and overcome. Jung believed that suffering is a universal experience, but what differentiates those who transform from those who remain stuck is the willingness to look within. It is easy to blame the world, others, or even God for our pain, but true liberation begins when we take responsibility for exploring it. This is not about blaming yourself. It is about understanding that the power to heal and grow has always been within you. In our darkest moments, the unconscious sends us messages, though we rarely recognize them at first. It may come as a recurring dream, an overwhelming sense of emptiness, or even constant conflicts in our relationships. These are not mere accidents or coincidences. They are symbols, ways in which our psyche urges us to pay attention. Jung said that ignoring these messages is like trying to cover the sun with a single finger. Eventually, the truth will reveal itself, and that truth is not always comfortable. Many times, our pain is deeply connected to our shadows, the parts of ourselves we prefer not to see. Perhaps it is a fear we have carried since childhood, an insecurity that paralyzes us, or an emotional wound we never allowed to heal. But Jung showed us that facing our shadows is the first step toward integrating them, turning them into a source of power rather than a burden. As you reflect on your own life, ask yourself, what emotions have I been repressing? What experiences have I avoided confronting out of fear of reliving the pain? These questions are not easy, but they are necessary, because only when we gather the courage to look within ourselves can we truly begin the healing process. And in that process, we discover something remarkable, that we are far stronger and wiser than we ever believed. As we move forward on this journey, remember, pain is not the end. It is a teacher, one that challenges us to grow, to let go of what no longer serves us, and to embrace our true selves. Instead of resisting it, allow yourself to feel it, understand it, and learn from it, because in doing so, you will not only find peace, but also a sense of purpose and clarity that will transform your life. The pain we experience in our darkest moments is, paradoxically, the first step toward a deeper connection with ourselves. In those moments when everything seems to be falling apart, something within us begins to emerge, our authenticity. Jung believed that pain forces us to strip away the masks we wear to fit into the world and confront our true essence. And though that can be terrifying, it is also profoundly liberating. Think about the times in your life when you felt like you couldn't go on, when the weight of your problems seemed unbearable. What was it that allowed you to overcome that phase? Perhaps it was the need to find purpose, or maybe a moment of introspection that revealed something new about yourself. Jung teaches us that these crises are not coincidences, but a kind of initiation. It is as if the universe or our own psyche were testing us, not to destroy us, but to transform us. This process of transformation has a name in Jungian psychology: individuation. It is the journey toward becoming who we truly are by integrating both our shadows and our light, accepting not only our virtues but also our flaws. And here lies the key point. You cannot reach this state without going through pain. Jung used to say that gold is in the shadow. This means that the answers we seek, the peace we long for, are hidden within those aspects of ourselves that we tend to avoid. It is natural to want to escape from pain, to look for distractions or quick fixes, but these only prolong our suffering. Jung encourages us to do something radically different, to face it, not as a victim, but as an explorer ready to uncover the hidden treasures within. Because whether you believe it or not, every wound you carry holds a lesson, a piece of wisdom that can change the way you see life. And when you begin to explore your pain, something surprising happens. You realize you are not alone. Suffering is a universal human experience. At some point, we have all faced loss, failure, or fear. And in that connection with others, we find incredible strength. Because when we share our stories, our struggles, and our victories, we come to see that we are far more resilient than we ever imagined. You might be thinking, this sounds good, but how do I do it? How do I confront something I've been avoiding for so long? Jung offers us a guide. The first step is to listen. Listen to your body, your emotions, and your thoughts. When something hurts, whether physically or emotionally, it is a signal. Instead of ignoring it, stop and ask yourself, what is this trying to tell me? What part of me needs attention or healing? The next step is acceptance. Accepting does not mean resigning yourself. It means acknowledging what you feel without judgment. Jung said, what you resist persists, and nothing could be truer when it comes to pain. The more we try to suppress it, the more it manifests in our lives in ways we don't understand. But when we accept it, when we give it space to exist, it begins to lose its power over us. And then comes integration. This is the moment when we begin to transform pain into something meaningful. It can be through writing, art, meditation, or even just talking to someone we trust. The important thing is to find a way to give voice to what we carry inside, to allow those emotions to flow instead of being trapped in them. Through this process, you will discover something extraordinary. Pain does not define you. It is part of your story, but it is not the whole story. And the more you work to understand and integrate it, the clearer your purpose becomes. Jung believed that each of us has a unique calling, a purpose that is deeply connected to our life experiences. And often, it is through pain that we find the clues to discovering it. But this journey is not something you have to walk alone. In Jung's philosophy, personal growth always happens in relation to others. Whether it is a friend, a therapist, or even a community like this one, surrounding yourself with people who support and inspire you is essential. Because while inner work is a personal journey, the connections we build with others help keep us on the path. And as you immerse yourself in the journey of facing your pain, a powerful truth emerges. Pain does not only transform you, it also changes the way you relate to the world. Carl Jung firmly believed that the outer world is a reflection of our inner world. In other words, our relationships, decisions, and experiences are deeply influenced by how we manage our internal emotions, including suffering. Imagine, for a moment, what it would be like to live without fear of pain, not because it doesn't exist, but because you have learned to face it and use it as a tool for your growth. Jung described this state as a balance between consciousness and the unconscious, a dance where both work together instead of being in conflict. When we achieve this balance, our lives begin to align in ways that once seemed impossible. However, this process is not linear. There will be days when you feel like you've made progress, only to encounter a challenge that seems to pull you away from your center. It is important to remember that these setbacks are not failures but part of the journey. Jung used to say that true progress often comes in spirals. You revisit old wounds, but from a place of greater understanding and strength. One of Jung's most transformative concepts is that of the shadow. We all have one, that part of ourselves we would rather not see. It can include fears, insecurities, or aspects of our personality that we have repressed because they do not fit the image we want to project to the world. But here's the secret. The more you deny your shadow, the more control it has over you. It's like trying to cover a volcano with a weak lid. Eventually, the pressure will rise to the surface. Accepting your shadow is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of courage. It means looking in the mirror with honesty and compassion, recognizing both your light and your darkness. Because, as Jung taught, only by integrating our shadow can we become whole beings. And it is in this integration that we find inner peace. Not because everything is perfect, but because we are no longer at war with ourselves. As you begin working with your shadow, you will notice subtle but powerful changes in your life. Perhaps you'll realize that you no longer react the same way to certain situations or people. Maybe you'll feel that your relationships become more authentic, less burdened by expectations or resentments. This is no coincidence. It is the result of freeing the parts of yourself that you once kept repressed. A powerful example of this is how we approach personal relationships. Often, our relationships reflect our internal wounds. If we have not healed certain parts of ourselves, those wounds are likely to manifest in our interactions with others. But when we begin to heal, we also begin to attract relationships that are more aligned with our truth. This does not mean that there will never be conflicts, but that we will have the clarity and strength to handle them from a place of love and authenticity. Another key aspect of this work is learning to let go. Jung believed that one of the greatest sources of human suffering is our resistance to change. We cling to relationships, situations, or beliefs that no longer serve us because we fear the unknown. But in that clinging, we only prolong our pain. Letting go does not mean giving up. It means trusting that by releasing what no longer resonates with you, you are making space for something better. Imagine you are holding a heavy object in each hand. As time passes, the weight begins to wear you down, yet you hesitate to release it because you fear the unknown. You don't know what will happen next, so you cling to what is familiar, even if it burdens you. Now, imagine that by letting go, your hands become free to grasp something new, something lighter, something far more meaningful. This is how the process of letting go works in our lives. And when we learn to release what no longer serves us, we also learn to trust ourselves, our intuition, and the natural flow of life. Jung described this trust as a connection to something greater, a profound sense of purpose that transcends ego and unites us with the vastness of the universe. But this connection is not something you can seek externally. It is cultivated from within through deep inner work. The beauty of this process is that the more you align with yourself, the more the world around you aligns with you. Opportunities begin to unfold. The right people enter your life, and most importantly, you discover an inner peace that is not dependent on external circumstances. It is a peace that arises from knowing who you truly are and living in harmony with that truth. Real transformation begins the moment you decide to apply everything you have learned about yourself in your daily life. Carl Jung showed us that knowledge has no real value unless it is translated into action. This is where inner work finds its highest expression, in the choices you make, the relationships you build, and the way you confront the challenges of everyday life. Imagine that every interaction, every obstacle, every moment is an opportunity to practice this newfound connection with yourself. You are no longer reacting from a place of fear or insecurity. You are acting from a place of authenticity and clarity. This shift does not happen overnight. But over time, you'll begin to notice that your life transforms in ways that once seemed impossible. One of the most crucial steps in this journey is developing a conscious relationship with your emotions. Jung said that emotions are the language of the unconscious, and learning to listen to them is essential for living fully. The next time you feel sadness, anger, or fear, instead of suppressing these emotions, pause and ask yourself, what is this trying to tell me? What need or unresolved wound lies beneath this feeling? When you start exploring your emotions in this way, you realize they are not your enemies. They are allies guiding you toward deeper self-understanding. Perhaps the anger you feel is simply a signal that you need to establish firmer boundaries in your relationships. Or maybe the sadness is a reminder that there is something you need to release in order to move forward. Every emotion has a purpose, and learning to honor that purpose is an act of self-love. Another key aspect of this path is paying attention to synchronicities. Jung coined this term to describe those meaningful coincidences that seem to occur at just the right moment. Maybe you think about someone and suddenly they call you, or you come across a book that provides the exact answer to a question you have been contemplating. These experiences are not mere chance. They are signs that you are aligned with your purpose and your truth. However, in order to recognize these synchronicities, you must be present. We live in a world that constantly distracts us with external noise, but the true power of synchronicities only reveals itself when you are connected to yourself. Dedicate time to introspection, to meditation, or simply to silence. It is in these moments of stillness that answers often emerge. As you work on yourself, it is also crucial to surround yourself with people who support your growth. Jung emphasized that our relationships act as mirrors of our inner state. If you find yourself surrounded by people who constantly drain your energy or make you feel inadequate, it is time to ask yourself what you are allowing into your life. This is not about blaming others, but about reflecting on why you attract certain dynamics and how you can change them. At the same time, seek connections that inspire you, that challenge you to become the best version of yourself. These relationships won't always be comfortable, but they will be authentic. And in that authenticity, you will find a sense of belonging that goes beyond appearances. Finally, never underestimate the power of small steps. Transformation can sometimes feel overwhelming, as if you need to change everything all at once. But Jung taught us that deep change happens in the details. It is in those small daily decisions. Choose to act from love instead of fear, where you truly transform your life. For example, the next time you face a difficult situation, instead of reacting automatically, pause and reflect. Ask yourself, what part of me is being triggered? How can I respond from a more conscious place? Or when you feel consumed by stress, take a few minutes to breathe deeply and reconnect with yourself. These small acts of presence have a cumulative impact that can change your life. The path to inner peace and fulfillment is not easy, but it is profoundly rewarding. Every step you take not only brings you closer to your truth, but also inspires others to find theirs. Because, as Jung reminded us, when we heal our own wounds, we also contribute to the healing of the world around us. When you choose to embrace your pain as a teacher, you realize that it is not an obstacle, but a bridge to your true self. Carl Jung showed us that suffering, no matter how difficult, has a purpose: to open our eyes to our essence and allow us to live with greater authenticity. This journey is not simple, but every step you take is an affirmation of your inner strength and your commitment to a fuller, more meaningful life. By learning to integrate your shadows, to listen to the signals from your unconscious, and to trust the synchronicities that appear along your path, you become someone who lives in harmony with their truth. That inner peace you once longed for is no longer a distant ideal. It is a tangible experience that you create from within. And in doing so, you not only transform your own life, but also the world around you. Remember, change begins with you. Every action, every conscious decision you make has the power to impact those around you. When you live from your authenticity, you inspire others to do the same. That is the magic of this process. Not only do you free yourself, but you also open the door for others to find their own path to peace and fulfillment. Now is your moment to act. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to do something powerful. Share this video with someone who might need it. Maybe you know someone going through a difficult time, struggling with their shadow, or seeking a deeper connection with themselves. By sharing this content, you are not only helping that person, but also contributing to the creation of a community of transformation and support. Leave a comment below. Tell me which part of this message touched your heart or how you plan to apply these teachings in your life. Your words have the power to inspire others who read them and strengthen this network of people committed to personal growth. And don't forget to subscribe. If you haven't done it yet, this is just the beginning of a journey filled with deep reflections, valuable lessons, and powerful tools to transform your life. By activating the notification bell, you ensure that you won't miss any of the upcoming videos, where we will continue to explore these topics in even greater depth. Every time you engage with this content, you help it reach more people. People like you, who are searching for answers and guidance on their path. Remember, life is not about escaping pain, but about finding within it the key to your transformation. You have the power to change your reality. Do it now. Start today. Because the world needs more authentic, courageous individuals who are willing to live in alignment with their truth. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for being part of this community. Together, we are creating something truly extraordinary. I'll see you in the next video, and never forget, change begins with you. Until next time.
Have you ever truly sat with yourself and asked why you feel the way you do? Why that persistent heaviness follows you like a silent shadow, clinging to every step you take? It's not always sadness in the traditional sense, nor is it simply emptiness or fatigue. It's something far more elusive, something that escapes definition, a quiet sorrow that settles deep in your bones and never seems to lift. You don't talk about it. Of course you don't. Instead, you mask it with polite smiles, half-hearted small talk, and social obligations that feel like wearing clothes 2 sizes too small. You go through the motions because that's what's expected. But inside, something aches, something you've stopped trying to name. You tell yourself, this is temporary. A bad week, a bad season, maybe even a bad year. You convince yourself that things will eventually change, that the fog will lift on its own. But every single morning, you wake up with that same invisible ache lodged deep in your chest. It doesn't scream, it doesn't shout, it just lingers. It hums like a low, familiar frequency that only you can hear. And over time, it makes you question. Am I depressed? Am I broken? Is there something inside me that's fundamentally wrong? But here's where it gets even darker, more disorienting. You're not broken in the way you might think. This isn't just depression, not in the clinical chemical sense that people talk about. What you're experiencing is more subtle and insidious. It's not just sadness, it's betrayal. And not by others, but by your own mind. You are caught in a silent war, and the enemy is you. The voice in your head, the one that tears you down, questions your worth, scrutinizes every decision, is a voice you created. You built it, you fed it, and now it governs you with surgical precision. Without even realizing it, you've turned your own thoughts into weapons. You hand them over every day to an invisible version of yourself that knows exactly where to strike. You are both the victim and the executioner. And the most horrifying part? You're incredibly good at it. Your self-sabotage is not clumsy or chaotic. It's methodical, practiced, nearly perfect. You don't even realize how much of your pain is self-inflicted. You blame the world, the circumstances, the people around you. You say life is hard, unfair, unrelenting. But if you dig deeper, beneath the surface excuses, you'll see the brutal truth. You are the designer of your own suffering. You are the one who plants seeds of doubt in your mind. You are the one who waters them with overthinking and lets them bloom into paralyzing fears. You create standards so high no human could ever meet them, then crucify yourself for falling short. Every time you berate yourself, every time you whisper that you're not good enough, You're driving the knife deeper. And worst of all, you know this. Some part of you knows. But admitting it would mean facing a storm you've spent your entire life avoiding. You feel off, defective, like you're malfunctioning in a world that expects perfection. But the tragic irony is, you're operating exactly as you were conditioned to. You've become the perfect saboteur, relentless, vigilant, unforgiving. You question your own joy. You downplay your accomplishments. You bury every flicker of pride under a mountain of self-imposed humility. And why? Because somewhere along the way, you decided it was safer to hurt yourself before someone else could. You created an internal wound and called it protection. You believed that if you were hard on yourself first, no one else could surprise you with pain. You built a fortress, but the walls were made of razors, and now everything that touches you cuts a little deeper. You wear your fear like armor, your self-criticism like a shield. But these things don't guard you. They drain you. Slowly, silently, they eat you alive. And if you listen carefully, you'll realize these words aren't just poetic abstractions. They're a mirror. They reflect a fear that you've long buried under the illusion of control. The fear that you'll never be enough, that no matter how hard you try, you'll always fall short of the impossible expectations you've set for yourself. And that's where the noose tightens, not from the outside world, but from within. Every anxious thought, every perfectionist impulse, every moment of self-doubt pulls the rope tighter. Carl Jung once warned that the greatest danger to humanity lies not in the world, but in the psyche. He understood that the real battles are not fought in the streets or the fields. They rage silently inside the mind. Because if the threat was external, you could escape it. You could move, change jobs, find new friends. But when the threat lives within, there's no flight, only the illusion of escape. You carry your war with you. Every city, every room, every conversation is haunted by it. You bring the battlefield wherever you go because the battlefield is you. No flags, no enemies, no peace treaties, just you, waking up every day to fight yourself in silence. And you've done it for so long that it's become your normal. You don't even hear the explosions anymore. You've grown numb to your own suffering. You've made peace with the chaos, and that is the saddest piece of all. You carry burdens that were never yours to begin with. You inherited guilt from voices long gone, expectations from people who never saw the real you. You learned to apologize for existing, to shrink yourself, to walk through life like you owe the world an apology for breathing. But none of this was innate. It was taught. It was repeated. It was carved into you until you believed it was truth. You cultivated your own guilt like a garden. You nurtured it with every insecurity, trimmed it with every fear, and fed it with the silence of never standing up for yourself. Because let's be honest, being hard on yourself is easier than forgiving yourself. Punishment feels familiar. Compassion feels foreign. And so, self-hatred becomes your default, your routine, your home. Why? Because you were trained for this since childhood. You were taught that being kind to yourself was weakness, that being proud of yourself was arrogance, that loving yourself was vanity. So you became your own worst critic, your harshest judge. You convinced yourself that self-compassion was dangerous. But no one ever told you that the real danger was the slow, corrosive effect of constant self-destruction. And this is the part where most people stop listening. Because the truth hurts. The truth isn't warm or comfortable. It shakes the foundations. It demands that you take responsibility for the way you treat yourself. And that's terrifying. Because if you're the one holding the knife, then you're the one who has to choose to drop it. But here you are, still listening, still breathing. And maybe, just maybe, that means you're ready. Ready to stop waging war on yourself. Ready to stop normalizing pain. Ready to rebuild not with shame, but with understanding. Because you deserve that much. You always have. You're still here because something deep inside you recognizes every word as truth. Not just any truth, but your truth. One you've never quite managed to explain, yet you've always felt. You've carried it like a quiet ache, a background noise to your existence that never goes silent. And despite everything, despite the years, the doubts, the wounds, you're still here. Because somewhere inside you, there's a voice that refuses to die. A part of you. Maybe the smallest part, but also the most powerful. That still believes you're not meant to live in chains. That you're not destined to be a prisoner of fear. So let me tell you something that maybe no one has ever dared to say out loud. Something no one has had the courage to offer you as a mirror. That spark inside you, that stubborn little flame that refuses to be extinguished, is not just resilience. It's raw power. It's proof that courage was never something you lacked. You simply didn't know it had always been there, waiting for you to notice it. The real question isn't, why do I feel like this? It's, what is this trying to show me? What is the purpose of this constant war within you? Why do you keep sharpening your inner blades only to use them on yourself? What do you gain by fighting a battle that leaves you exhausted every single day? Because whether you realize it or not, there's something in that suffering that has become comfortable, familiar, maybe even necessary. It has become your shield, your excuse to avoid the far more terrifying war, the one outside, the one where you might fail in front of others, where your wounds could be seen. So long as you're busy battling yourself, you don't have to face the risk of truly living. And in a strange, painful way, that's become your refuge, a shelter built from ruin. One that burns, yes, but it's your fire, and you know every inch of it. Here's the shift that might change everything. You're not trying to destroy yourself. You're trying to wake up. What you call suffering, what you experience as torment, is actually the cost of consciousness in a world that thrives on numbness. Your inner war is not a sign of weakness. It's the clearest sign that you haven't given up, that you're still trying to break free, that you still believe deep down that something better is possible. Carl Jung was right. Life is suffering, but more than that, it's transformation. And the point isn't to escape the pain, it's to become someone new because of it. This is the true challenge, not just to survive, but to alchemize your pain, to turn every scar into a source of wisdom, to wear every wound not as a shameful secret, but as a quiet medal on your soul. Look at yourself. No, really. Look inward. Even without a mirror, observe who you've become through the lens of these words. Can you see the weary but undefeated warrior who still lives inside you? Can you feel that spark that hasn't gone out, not even after everything you've been through? That spark isn't a coincidence. It's not a mistake. It's your truth. Your soul refusing to forget its purpose. It's undeniable proof that you are not broken. You're still in the midst of the only battle that truly matters, the battle for yourself. And now that you know it, welcome. Welcome to the war you didn't even realize you were fighting. And prepare yourself, because now the real journey begins. Because once your eyes are open, truly open, there's something even darker you need to confront. A more insidious enemy than any thought you've labeled as bad or dark. This one doesn't scream. It doesn't hurt right away. It doesn't come at you like a storm. It seeps in slowly, like a subtle poison. It whispers. It blends in with your thoughts so perfectly that you begin to mistake it for your own voice. This enemy is called self-deception. That's right, not sadness, not fear, not anxiety. What's been quietly destroying you is the illusion you've built to justify why you haven't changed. It's the false story you've told yourself so many times that now you call it fact. You've convinced yourself that you can't evolve, that your circumstances are immovable, that your wounds are too deep and your burdens too heavy. And that story, crafted word by word over the years, has become your favorite prison. A place where you're always safe, but never free. But let's go deeper, because this isn't about staying on the surface. This isn't about giving you comfort. This is about confronting the fire inside of you. And if we dare to dig, really dig, we'll find something uncomfortable but necessary. That part of you that refuses to let go of the victim role. It's not there because you're weak. It's there because it gives you something. It's easier to be a victim. It's seductive. Playing the victim gives you a pass. It means you never have to take the terrifying step of trying, of risking, of failing. It lets you gain sympathy without ever having to be fully vulnerable. It's like living in a broken house that you've convinced yourself is safer than the unknown outside. Yes, the walls are crumbling. Yes, it hurts. But you know it. You've learned its rules, and anything else, even happiness, feels foreign. So you stay, because pain you've come to know is easier than freedom you don't. And here's the brutal truth. Comfort is your enemy. Not the comfort of luxury or routine. I mean inner comfort. That soft lie you tell yourself every day. This is just how I am. The space where you stop asking questions. The space where growth goes to die. Because growth doesn't happen in safety. It happens in risk, in vulnerability, in not knowing. And your mind, wired for survival, prefers the pain it understands over the healing it can't predict. That's why you've chosen the familiar cage. That's why you've mistaken survival for living. Your mind is a master at turning its own traps into sacred truths. It calls your walls wisdom. It calls your fears realism. It tells you that closing off your heart is smart, that never trying is practical. But none of it is true. It's all just a very convincing form of avoidance. You've become the guard of your own prison. You're the one locking the door every time life opens it a crack. And now I'm asking you to imagine something radical. Imagine peeling away every single excuse. Imagine seeing your life, your suffering, your beliefs with complete clarity. No filters, no stories, just truth. What would be left? I'll tell you. What would remain is the real you. The version of yourself you've never dared to meet. The one not defined by pain, but by the ability to rise above it. The one who isn't trapped in this inner war, but who understands it, learns from it, and transforms because of it. Because here's the final truth, the one that shatters the illusion completely. You cannot win this internal war by fighting harder. You cannot destroy the darkness by hating it more. You cannot beat yourself into becoming whole. The only way forward is through love, through understanding, through the radical, terrifying act of choosing to see yourself not as broken, but as becoming. Your battle ends not when you conquer yourself, but when you embrace the truth of who you are. And that is when the real transformation begins. You cannot extinguish fire by adding more fire. You need a different strategy. You must become the observer of your own inner conflict, not another blind soldier fighting within it. And this is where the true power of understanding begins to emerge. When you stop reacting against yourself and start observing your mental movements, you become a strategist. Carl Jung taught that true transformation begins when the unconscious becomes conscious, when you stop being a puppet of your instincts and start witnessing them with clarity. You're no longer the panicked soldier running aimlessly across the battlefield, but the calm commander who anticipates every move before making it. You begin to predict your own self-sabotage, disarm the traps you once set for yourself. What is that, if not the beginning of self-mastery? And trust me, there is no weapon more lethal in this internal war than mastery over oneself. But don't misinterpret these words. Mastery does not mean repression. It doesn't mean choking your emotions until they vanish. It means understanding them so deeply they lose their grip on you. It means watching the wave of harsh self-criticism build, and instead of being swept away, learning to ride it. It means recognizing when you're sinking into self-deception and having the courage to grab hold of the rope of truth, even when it burns your hands. Because let me warn you, truth burns. It does not caress, it scorches. But this burn is purifying. It forges you. And there's a deeper layer we cannot ignore. While you're caught in your internal battle, time does not pause. It doesn't wait for you to resolve your war before moving on. Life marches forward relentlessly, dragging you along whether you're ready or not. The days burn away, the years dissolve, and without even noticing, you become someone who spent an entire existence at war with themselves, without ever aiming a single shot toward their true goals. Do you see it now? This is the ultimate trap. The inner war drains you so deeply that you forget to fight for what actually matters. You spend years battling ghosts of your own invention while your real dreams starve in silence. Let me put it even more clearly. Your worst enemy isn't sadness, it's not fear, it's not anxiety, it's distraction. That constant distraction that pulls your attention away from what matters and towards the fireworks of your own doubts. It's like being on a sinking ship and wasting your strength arguing with your reflection instead of patching the leaks. You become a prisoner of your own mental theater, a never-ending performance leading nowhere. And why is this enemy so dangerous? Because it's quiet. It doesn't scream. It doesn't look like a threat. It disguises itself as logic, as caution, as constructive self-criticism. But it's not constructive. It's destructive, only it moves so slowly that you don't realize it until it's too late. It convinces you that waiting a little longer is wise, that doubt is rational, that postponing your dreams in the name of responsibility is the mature thing to do. And meanwhile, life is slipping through your fingers. I want you to think about this with all the brutality it deserves. Every day you spend stuck in this inner war, you are giving away your time, your energy, your life to an enemy that exists only in your mind. You are surrendering your days to an illusion. You are mortgaging your existence out of fear of confronting what lies beyond your internal conflict. And here's the part that will chill your blood. What lies beyond is not an abyss. It's freedom. It's the possibility of living without the constant weight of mental self-destruction. But to reach that freedom, you must walk across the minefield of your own deceptions. The good news is, the mines aren't real. They are mental constructs, ones you can dismantle if you dare to see them for what they truly are. Sophisticated excuses disguised as protection. You need to understand that this inner war cannot be won with more resistance. It is won through surrender. Not the kind of surrender that signals defeat, but the kind that signifies acceptance. Acceptance that the war was never necessary. Acceptance that you are not broken, that you don't need fixing. You simply need to stop fighting your own existence. Let me ask you something you've probably avoided for far too long. How much longer are you going to delay your own peace? How many more days, weeks, or even years will you choose to remain trapped? Not by someone else, not by the world, but by your own inner mechanisms, by the mental weapons you've forged and turned against yourself. You see, the battle that's been raging inside of you, it doesn't end when life gets easier or when someone comes along to rescue you. It ends only when you decide to lay down your arms, and not a second before. Listen carefully now. Don't let your mind wander. This is where most people look away, where they blink, where they retreat into the comfort of distraction. But not you, because what I'm about to share is something most never dare to speak out loud. It's the final chapter in the story you thought you understood. A revelation buried beneath all the motivational noise, beneath the surface of every self-help book you've ever skimmed. The war within you, the one that keeps you up at night, that tightens your chest, that whispers failure when you try to rise. It doesn't end with a flash of insight or a sudden jolt of inspiration. It doesn't end with a catchy quote or a fleeting feeling. That's not how real transformation works. That's not how inner peace is born. The truth is harder. It's deeper. The truth is that the part of you you've been fighting, the part you call your inner enemy, is not really your enemy at all. It is a fragment of you, raw and unrefined, desperately trying to speak. That fear, that harsh voice that criticizes your every move, that self-sabotage you mistake for weakness, none of it is meant to destroy you. It's meant to wake you up. What you've been calling your enemy is just a distorted reflection of your own survival instinct. Primitive, chaotic, overreactive. A voice formed in moments of trauma and uncertainty. A voice trying to shield you from imagined threats long after the danger has passed. But in its confusion, it lashes out at the very person it's trying to protect. You. Do you understand what that means? You've been trying to silence this voice with force. You've tried to numb it, escape it, or destroy it entirely. But you can't win that way, because it's not a monster. It's a scared guardian. And no amount of violence will quiet a guardian who believes you are still in danger. So what do? You do the hardest, most counterintuitive thing possible. You don't fight it. You don't surrender to it either. You listen. You understand. You acknowledge its presence without letting it take the wheel. That's what true inner mastery looks like. It's not about creating a perfectly silent mind. That doesn't exist. Even the most enlightened minds are filled with noise. But they've learned to walk anyway. You build, even as the doubts echo through your skull. You move forward, even when fear clings to your heels. You take one more step, knowing the ghosts of your past may always be near, but they no longer have the power to guide your direction. Because here is a truth that changes everything. Fear doesn't vanish. It doesn't dissolve in light. It walks beside you, and you walk anyway. Insecurity doesn't disappear, but it loses its grip every time you act despite it. And that war you've been fighting inside, it isn't won like a normal war. It's transcended. It ends not in conquest, but in understanding. Not in domination, but in integration. Look at yourself. Really look. You've made it this far, through the storms, through the dark nights, when your own thoughts felt like enemies. You've endured every judgment, every failure, every self-inflicted wound. You've survived truths that others would run from. Doesn't that tell you something? That somewhere deep inside, the transformation has already begun, even if you didn't see it happening. There's a part of you, small perhaps, but growing, that's sick of illusions, tired of comforting lies, and ready, finally ready, for the discomfort that leads to growth. That core part of you, your essence, has moved beyond mere survival. It wants to live now, truly live. And that is the most sacred kind of victory. The realization that you don't have to keep wounding yourself to prove you're strong. That you can stop picking up weapons and start picking up tools. That the darkest part of you, the one you've labeled as broken or weak, may be the very source of your resilience, your insight, your power. Because a person who has survived the war within is no longer afraid of what the world might throw at them. They've already faced their fiercest opponent, themselves, and they made it out alive. So now, I want to offer you something. Just one simple act. It won't cost anything. It's small, but it's powerful, if you choose to do it. Leave a comment beneath this video with these words. Today, I've seen my true enemy. That's all. No explanation, no context. Let it sit there like a mysterious message, a breadcrumb trail for others who are beginning to wake up. It will be our quiet revolution, the unseen chorus of those who have decided to face their own reflection. And if these words reached you, if even a tiny part of you felt seen, recognized, understood, then stay, subscribe. Because what we've uncovered here, it's only the beginning. There is more, so much more to discover, to unravel, to rebuild from the ashes. This journey isn't ending, it's just beginning. But before you go, I want you to do one final thing. Don't go searching for peace in the outside world, not while there's a war still being waged inside. Make today the day you form the most important alliance of your life, not with anyone else, with yourself. Look into your inner reflection. Really look and say, I won't destroy you. I'll listen to you. I won't fear you. I'll walk beside you. That is real power. Not silence, not absence, but harmony within chaos. Grace inside the storm. And now, say goodbye to the old version of you. Not in anger, not in shame, but with honor. That version of you tried, survived, adapted. It was a necessary chapter, but it is no longer the whole book. You are more than your wounds, more than your doubts. You are the architect of your own freedom. Turn off this video. Yes, turn it off. But when you do, let it be with intention. Let this not be just another moment of temporary motivation. Let it mark a turning point, a declaration that from this point on, you will no longer live in fear of your own mind. That when the screen goes dark, something inside you lights up, and maybe, just maybe, you'll begin to walk forward for the first time in years, without the crushing weight of your inner war dragging behind you. And always remember, true victory doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It makes no sound. It is felt, quietly and deeply, in the stillness of a soul that no longer needs to fight to be at peace. I'll see you in the next video, or maybe I won't. Because if you truly do this work, if you really awaken, you'll be too busy living to look back. There comes a moment in every person's life when, without warning, something inside breaks. It's not sadness, it's not anger, it's something deeper. It feels as if the soul itself grows tired of carrying the weight of other people's expectations, of holding on to relationships that only drain, of trying to fit into spaces that no longer belong. It is in that moment that something profound happens, something Carl Jung described as the beginning of the true process of individuation, the breaking point where the mask falls and the authentic self begins to emerge. But what's curious is that this moment doesn't come with great announcements. There is no sign in the sky, no mark on the calendar that says, "Today is the day you will set yourself free." It doesn't arrive when you expect it, but rather when you need it the most. It comes after countless nights spent trying to convince yourself that things will get better, that maybe if you change, if you try harder, if you ignore that heavy feeling in your chest that screams something isn't right, then everything will finally fall into place. But it never does. It never fits. And then, in the middle of that emotional exhaustion, the decision happens. The decision to say, no more. For Jung, this moment is a call from the unconscious. It is not a whim, nor a simple emotional reaction. It is a deep message from the psyche, a silent scream that has been waiting for years to be heard. It is the beginning of a journey with no return, because once you decide to let go of what no longer belongs to you, once you dare to walk towards your authenticity, there is no turning back. The person you once were begins to fade, and in their place, someone new emerges, someone stronger, more conscious, more you. What many don't understand is that saying no more is not an act of rebellion, but an act of self-love. It is not an ending, it is a beginning. But why is it so difficult? Why, even when we know something is harming us, do we struggle to let go? Jung explained it in a way so clear that it hurts to accept, because we have built our identity around what makes us suffer. Maybe you haven't noticed, but for years you have told yourself the same story. You have justified your pain with phrases like, "That's just how things are. I can't do anything to change it. Maybe I deserve this. What if I end up alone?" Your unconscious has accepted these ideas as absolute truths, and in doing so, they have shaped your reality. You have stayed in relationships that don't add value, in jobs that kill your spirit, in dynamics that only exhaust you. And the worst part? A part of you has come to believe that this is normal, that this is just how life is. But it's not. Jung taught us that the soul is always seeking its own evolution, and that evolution requires shedding what no longer resonates with our authentic self. However, to do so, we must go through a painful but transformative process, the confrontation with the shadow. The shadow is everything you have repressed, the parts of yourself you were taught to hide, the desires, thoughts, and emotions you deemed unacceptable. But the shadow does not disappear just because you ignore it. On the contrary, it manifests in your life in subtle but constant ways, in the patterns you repeat, in the relationships that hurt you, in the anxiety you cannot explain. And here lies the crucial point. When you say no more, you are facing your shadow head-on. You are challenging the belief system that has kept you trapped. In a way, you are dying in order to be reborn. That is why it hurts. That is why it is so difficult. Because you are not just letting go of a person, a job, or a situation. You are letting go of a version of yourself. A version that has been with you for years, that has been your refuge, your excuse, your comfort zone. But it no longer serves you. It is no longer you. When you decide to let go, the unconscious reacts. At first, you will feel fear. You will doubt yourself. You will question whether you made the right decision. And it is at this point that many people retreat. But this is where you must remember something fundamental. Fear is not a sign that you are making a mistake. It is a sign that you are changing. The unconscious does not want you to change. Its function is to keep you in the known, the predictable. But the soul has a different plan. And this is where the real internal battle begins. The battle between the comfort of the old and the uncertainty of the new. But if you hold on, if you push through the initial chaos without looking back, something incredible happens. You begin to reclaim your energy. Jung described this as a kind of psychic rebirth. For years, your energy has been scattered, trapped in dynamics that did not allow you to grow. Every time you tolerated a situation you didn't want, you gave away a piece of your vitality. Every time you suppressed an emotion out of fear of rejection, you distanced yourself further from your essence. But when you make the decision to let go, all that energy returns to you. It is an almost magical process. What once seemed impossible suddenly becomes clear. What once hurt suddenly doesn't matter as much. And what you once thought you needed suddenly loses its meaning. But there is something else, something no one tells you, something you only discover when you go through this process. The self-love that emerges after saying no more is incomparable to any other form of love. It is a love that does not depend on external validation, that does not need approval. It is a love that is born from within, from the certainty that you are enough just as you are. And when you discover that, when you experience that level of love for yourself, your life changes forever. You stop looking outside for what has always been inside. You stop settling for crumbs because you finally understand your true worth. You stop waiting for someone else to save you because you realize that you have always had the power to save yourself. And there, at that point, is where everything begins to align. Not because the universe is rewarding you for making the right decision, but because, at last, you are in tune with what was always meant to be yours. Relationships change, paths open, opportunities appear. Not because you're doing something different, but because for the first time, you are truly being yourself. But this process doesn't end here. Because once you discover self-love, there is something else you must do, something that will determine the course of your entire life. When you begin to experience the self-love that emerges after saying, no more, something in your perception of the world shifts. You used to justify toxic behaviors, downplay red flags, and tolerate what deep down you knew wasn't right. But now, with a new awareness of yourself, you can no longer ignore what once went unnoticed. It's as if you've woken up from a long sleep, and for the first time, you see reality without filters. What once seemed normal now feels unbearable. The excuses you used to tell yourself no longer make sense. And this is where one of the deepest transformations takes place. You start seeing people for who they really are, not for who you wish they were. For years, you convinced yourself that if you tried hard enough, if you were patient enough, if you gave enough, you could change someone. You could make them see your worth. You could be so good, so understanding, so loyal that eventually you would receive the love and respect you deserved. But now, you understand a fundamental truth. That was never your responsibility. No matter how much love you give, you cannot fill the void in someone who refuses to fill it themselves. Carl Jung explained that when a person has not integrated their shadow, the hidden parts of themselves they refuse to face, they project their internal conflicts onto others. This is why, in so many relationships, the same dynamics repeat over and over again. A person who hasn't confronted their own darkness will unconsciously seek someone who serves as a mirror, someone onto whom they can project their chaos. And if in the past you were that person, if you allowed someone to unload their wounds onto you without taking responsibility for them, it was because you hadn't yet realized something essential. You were never there to heal them. You were there to learn how to heal yourself. But when you say, "No more," when you refuse to continue in that cycle, something unexpected happens. The people who once controlled you with guilt, manipulation, or empty promises begin to reveal their true selves. Maybe they react with anger. Maybe they try to make you feel like you are the one who is failing. Maybe they tell you that you've changed. And the truth is, they're right. You have changed. You are no longer the person who tolerated the intolerable. You are no longer the person who stayed silent out of fear of losing love. Self-love is not a fleeting emotion. It is an internal foundation that, once built, becomes the base upon which you construct your entire life. But to solidify this love, you must face the hardest test of all: solitude. Because when you decide to let go of what no longer serves you, an emptiness is left behind. A space that was once filled with relationships, habits, and beliefs that, though painful, were familiar. And in that emptiness, in that uncertainty, fear appears. The fear that you made the wrong decision. The fear of being alone. The fear that you may never find something better. But this is where you must remember what Jung taught. The unconscious does not seek comfort. It seeks transformation. And transformation always involves a period of chaos before clarity arrives. During this process, it is normal for nostalgia to make you doubt. There will be moments when you miss what you left behind, not because you want it back, but because your mind has not yet adjusted to freedom. But that feeling of loss is only temporary, because deep down, there is one thing you know with absolute certainty. You could never go back to being the person you were before you woke up. And in that exact moment, something extraordinary happens. You start attracting something completely different, not because you are desperately trying to fill the void, but because now you vibrate at a different frequency. Jung said that what we experience in the external world is merely a reflection of our internal world. When you were broken inside, when you did not value yourself, you attracted people and situations that reinforced that belief. But now that you have recognized your worth, now that you understand that self-love is non-negotiable, everything changes. The people you once connected with no longer fit into your life, not because you chose to push them away, but because they no longer resonate with you. Situations that you once tolerated now feel intolerable. And instead of wondering if you are being too demanding, you realize that you are simply setting a new standard. You no longer accept less than what you deserve. Not because you think you are superior, but because you have finally become someone who respects themselves. And this is where many people fail. This is where they turn back. Because transformation is not a linear process. There are moments when you feel like you're making progress, and moments when it seems like you're regressing. But the key is not to let uncertainty pull you back into the past. The key is to trust that everything you are leaving behind was never meant to be permanent. The pain, the fear, the loneliness, they are not signs that you are lost. They are signs that you are growing. So, if today you feel like you are in the middle of the storm, remember this: the version of you that tolerated less, that made excuses, that settled, that version no longer exists. You are not lost. You are becoming. And that is the most powerful transformation of all. Jung believed that the greatest obstacle on the path to self-discovery is the fear of emptiness. And it's true, emptiness can feel overwhelming, even terrifying. But what no one ever taught us is that this void is sacred. It is the space where transformation begins. If you rush to fill it, if you cling to the familiar just to escape uncertainty, you will never uncover what was truly meant for you. That is why, after deciding to walk away, after freeing yourself from what was holding you back, the most important step is to embrace the void, to sit with it, to explore who you are without all the emotional baggage. Because something powerful happens when you resist the urge to fill the space with the first thing that comes along. Clarity emerges. That clarity that once felt out of reach, that deep realization that you don't need anything external to feel whole. And when you arrive at this understanding, when you finally grasp what it means to truly love yourself, life starts responding to you in ways you never imagined. You are no longer acting from scarcity, but from abundance. You no longer chase love. You radiate it. You no longer beg for attention. You naturally attract it. You no longer settle for the bare minimum, because now you recognize your worth. And that shift, that new version of you, begins to reshape everything around you. The people who enter your life are no longer looking to take advantage of you. They want to share in your energy. The opportunities that once seemed impossible now feel within reach, not because the world has changed, but because you have. And this is where true magic happens. Because when you become someone who genuinely loves themselves, when you fully embody this transformation, you don't just change your own life, you become a guiding light for others. You prove that letting go is possible, that renewal is real, that living in alignment with your truth is the only way forward. But this is just the beginning, because once you awaken to this power within you, there is one final challenge to face: making this transformation permanent. When you step into the self-love that arises from saying no more, you experience a sense of freedom unlike anything before. But this is also when many people are tested, tempted to return to the past, not because they want the pain back, but because the unknown still feels unsettling. Your mind will try to trick you, replaying only the good moments of what you left behind, downplaying the suffering, whispering doubts like, "What if it wasn't that bad? What if I never find something better? What if I overreacted?" But now, you know the truth. You know that every time you excused your pain, you were only extending it. You know that every time you stayed where you weren't valued, you were denying yourself growth. And most importantly, you know that going back is no longer an option. The version of you that tolerated the intolerable no longer exists. Jung taught that every significant experience expands the human psyche. You cannot shrink back into your old self after waking up. Trying to do so would only create more suffering, because deep down, you no longer belong to that outdated version of yourself. And yet, life will test you. Maybe the person you walked away from will reappear. Maybe a familiar situation will return in a different disguise. But this time, you have something you didn't have before: awareness. When you commit to evolving, when self-love becomes your foundation, you develop a new skill: the ability to see the truth without deception. And the truth is simple. Anything that asks you to betray your peace does not deserve a place in your life. Any relationship that requires you to shrink yourself is not love. It is a cage disguised as companionship. This is where many people stumble, because they mistake attachment for love. They believe missing something means they still need it, when in reality, it's just the last traces of an old emotional habit fading away. Missing something does not mean you made the wrong choice. It means your mind is recalibrating. Your subconscious is shedding years of conditioning. The real proof of growth isn't in how much pain you feel after letting go. It's in what you choose to do with the emptiness that follows. If you fill it with the first thing that shows up, with something that only brings temporary comfort, you will find yourself trapped in the same cycles. But if instead you use this space to reconnect with yourself, to dig deeper, to align with your true desires, then you are preparing yourself for something completely new. Life responds to the energy you project. When you are broken, you attracted from a place of fear and need. But now that you have learned to be at peace within yourself, everything shifts. Relationships are no longer built on fear of loneliness, but on genuine connection. You no longer settle for the bare minimum because you no longer feel desperate for love. Now, what you give comes from wholeness, not emptiness, and the difference is profound. The most fascinating part of this journey is that once you stop searching outside for what has always been within you, everything changes. Everything begins to align naturally. Synchronicity, a concept Jung explored in depth, starts to manifest in your life. You no longer feel like you're swimming against the current because things simply flow. The answers you once searched for in desperation appear at just the right moment. The people who truly resonate with you start entering your life effortlessly. And most importantly, you are no longer afraid. Because when you truly understand your worth, when you have experienced the power of unconditional self-love, you realize that never again will you allow anyone to define you, to mold you, to make you feel inadequate. External validation becomes irrelevant because your internal validation is unshakable. This is the moment when transformation solidifies. You no longer need to prove anything to anyone. You no longer seek the world's acceptance because you have learned to accept yourself. You have integrated your shadow, understood your lessons, and now walk with a certainty you never had before. It's a level of peace that cannot be explained with words, only experienced. And here is where something interesting happens. When you change in this way, some people from your past will try to return, not because they have changed, but because they sense that they no longer have power over you. Where they once manipulated you, they now see that you are unbreakable. Where they once played with your emotions, they realize they can no longer shake your center. And this confuses them, not because you hate them, not because you seek revenge, but because now they see something in you that was always there, your power. The only difference is that now you recognize it too. Now you know who you are. Now you know what you deserve. And when you reach this point, there is no turning back, because you are no longer interested in proving anything. You no longer need to explain yourself. You no longer feel the urge to make others understand your worth. You simply are. And that is the greatest victory of all. Because when you reach this state of authentic self-love, life stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling like creation. You are no longer trapped in cycles of suffering. You no longer repeat old wounds. Now, you consciously choose what you allow in your life, because you have understood that everything around you is a reflection of what you believe you deserve. And now, you finally know your worth. That is the true meaning of self-love. It's not about being perfect. It's not about never having moments of doubt. It's about knowing, with every fiber of your being, that you will never again settle for less than what you truly deserve. Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to a choice. Continue living according to the expectations of others, or dare to live the life you truly desire. The moment you fully understand your worth is the moment your life changes forever. It's as if you suddenly wake up from an illusion that kept you trapped in cycles of suffering, stagnant relationships, and a distorted concept of love. And when you realize that never again will you allow anything or anyone to make you doubt your worth, everything around you starts to shift. At first, it might feel strange. You are used to the struggle, to justifying the unjustifiable, to postponing your peace in the name of patience or the hope that things will improve. But now, in this new state of awareness, you can no longer betray yourself. You can no longer ignore the signs. And that makes you different. Not because your essence has changed, but because you have finally reconnected with it. The people who once knew you might say that you are no longer the same. And they are right. You are no longer available for the dynamics you once tolerated. You are no longer the person who justified the lack of reciprocity. You no longer try to fit into places where you are not welcomed, because now you understand that every time you ignored your intuition, you were choosing your own suffering. Carl Jung said that when we repress our truth, the unconscious finds ways to bring it to the surface. It can do this through dreams, physical symptoms, anxiety, or a persistent feeling of emptiness. For years, you ignored these signs, convinced that it was normal to feel that way. But now, you see it clearly. It was never normal to carry that emotional weight. It was never normal to stay where you were not valued. It was never normal to silence your intuition just to avoid making others uncomfortable. The difference now is that you have learned to listen. You have learned to recognize what your soul has been trying to tell you all along. And most importantly, you have learned to trust yourself, because that is the key. Self-love is not an empty concept or just a nice idea. It is trust. Trust that what you feel is valid. Trust that you deserve something better. Trust that you do not need to cling to what no longer nourishes you. When you become someone who respects themselves, life starts reflecting that respect back to you in every aspect. Not because you have become stronger in the traditional sense, but because you no longer settle for less than you deserve. And the most fascinating part? You don't even need to make a great effort for this to happen. It's an energy shift. When you raise your standards, when you no longer tolerate the intolerable, the people who once took advantage of your low self-esteem start to drift away on their own. They can no longer manipulate you. They can no longer use you as a dumping ground for their chaos. And if they try, they quickly realize you are not the same person anymore. This is where some people feel fear, not because they want to return to who they used to be, but because the emptiness left after letting go of toxicity can be intimidating. There will be moments when you question whether you made the right choice, but in those moments, the only thing you need to do is remember a simple yet powerful truth. Self-love doesn't feel like immediate euphoria. It feels like peace. That peace that once seemed unattainable. The peace you used to seek in others and now discover within yourself. A peace that no longer depends on what someone else does or doesn't do, because you now understand that the most important relationship you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. And that changes everything. Now, at this new level of awareness, the challenges don't disappear. The temptations to go back may still arise, but the difference is that now you can distinguish between what is real and what is merely an illusion of the past. You don't need to justify yourself. You don't need to explain. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth, because you know it, you feel it, you live it. And here is where the real transformation happens. Because when you live from this space, when self-love has become your natural state, something incredible happens. You no longer seek to impress anyone. You no longer look for validation. You are no longer obsessed with being understood because you realize not everyone is ready for this transformation. Some people will say you've changed too much, that you are no longer the same, and they will be right. But what they fail to understand is that you haven't changed to fit a new mold. You've changed because you've finally broken free from one. When you live with self-love, your energy feels different. It's as if the things that used to affect you no longer have the same impact. You no longer react to manipulation. You no longer get dragged down by guilt. You no longer allow someone who doesn't know what they want to make you doubt what you do want. And that clarity, that certainty, is what finally gives you the power that was always within you. Life becomes simpler, not because challenges disappear, but because now you know which battles are worth fighting and which ones are not. You know you don't need to prove anything. You know that what is meant for you will come without forcing it. You know that what doesn't flow is not a challenge to conquer, but a sign that it's not your path. And when you reach this point, you realize something surprising. You no longer have any interest in going back. Because at the end of the day, everything comes down to one choice: to keep repeating patterns that only bring pain, or to dare to create an entirely new reality. You've already made your decision. Never again will you be the person who ignored their intuition. Never again will you settle for what doesn't serve you. Never again will you let anyone define your worth. Because now you understand something that will change your life forever. Self-love is not a destination. It's a journey. And now you are finally walking in the right direction. When you discover the self-love that emerges after saying, "No more," there is no turning back. What once felt like an internal battle now becomes absolute clarity. Uncertainty dissolves because you no longer need anyone to confirm your worth. You already know it. And here lies the key to everything. The world responds to the energy you project. Now that you have reconnected with yourself, now that you have learned to respect, honor, and release what no longer serves you, life begins to align with this new version of you. Because when you walk with certainty, when you have left behind the doubts and fears that once trapped you, everything authentic starts gravitating toward you. Maybe before, you struggled to understand why some people seem to move forward effortlessly while you felt stuck. But now you know the truth. It wasn't life that was against you. It was you who was holding on to what no longer had a place in your growth. Now you see it clearly. Now you understand that what was happening to you wasn't a punishment. It was a lesson. Now you realize that every relationship, every experience, every loss had a purpose: to lead you here, to this moment, where you finally recognize yourself, where you finally choose yourself, where you finally decide to live in harmony with who you truly are. And this is where true magic begins, because when you change, your environment changes. When you transform, the people who enter your life are different. When you raise your standards, the universe responds with opportunities, connections, and experiences that reflect your new level of awareness. And all of this starts with a single decision. The decision to never again accept less than what you deserve. Now that you have this clarity, I want you to do something. Don't keep this message to yourself. Share this knowledge with someone who needs it, with someone who is still trapped in the cycle you have already broken free from. Because what you've just heard is not just a reflection, It is a tool for transformation. Leave a comment below and tell me what part of this message resonated with you. I want to hear from you. I want to know what stage of this journey you are in and what you've learned from your own experience. And if this content has touched your soul, help me spread it to more people. Share this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so we can continue growing together on this path of self-discovery and transformation. Remember, every time you engage with this content, you are not only helping yourself, you are also helping others receive this message at the moment they need it most. Together, we can build a community of people who have chosen to awaken, to leave behind what no longer belongs to them, and to move forward toward the life they truly deserve. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And most of all, thank you for daring to choose yourself. See you in the next video. Remember, the change starts with you.